Madame Deputée, a teraz...
Bardzo dziękuję. Our next speaker is Jytte GUTELAND. You have 1 minute, madam.
Tack, herr ordförande.
Thank you very much, President. We need to have very fierce legislation in order to achieve what we are after now, and I'm convinced of this, having listened to this debate for many times. Nobody will share power voluntarily. It's naive to think so. If you believe so, you will have to wait another 100 years. And women have acquired what is needed and the education that's needed to be able to compete with the men. But myths are created in society so that women cannot acquire power. And one of them, these myths, is that there are no qualified women. There are many who wish to spread this myth, but the truth is that those in power do not really want to share it. One case is this chamber. This is proof of that kind of situation of the members. We have very few men who give priority to this debate. There were 3 a moment ago, but I think that is a good indication as to how self-serving interests are represented here. And that shows where you prioritize. It's time to really have solid legislation.
Tak, dziękuję.
Yes, thank you. Well, the chairman is a man, which shows that there is a will at the European Parliament to make sure that the quality of this debate is high. Jutta STEINRUCK, you have 1 minute.
We've been discussing the equality of women on the labor market, but what has happened after this non-binding discussion of so many months and months? 18% of women are in executive positions, so women are not really they're not within a system of equality. And even women who are qualified, but even minimally qualified individuals, should have access to access that's necessary. Doing this would be opening the way for other women in Europe. So the EP has done its work. Now it's time for the Council to act. In Germany, women have seen the changes there, that simply working on a free will basis doesn't work, and people have understood that it was necessary to have some sort of regulation with a system of quotas, and this is something that has to be dealt with now. We need a new approach. We need a new approach in the Council. We need a new approach in Germany, a new approach in the other member states as well. Otherwise, we're going to have to be discussing this issue with regard to this ceiling for hundreds and hundreds of years. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Deputy HONEYBALL, 1 minute, please.
Thank you, President. No less a person than Mrs. Angela Merkel said recently on German radio that we simply cannot afford to do without the skills of women. But this draft directive, which has come from the European Parliament, is about more than skills, and it's about more than company performance. It's about equality, something which the EU as an institution has believed in since its very foundation in the Treaty of Rome in 1957. So it's quite shameful, absolutely shameful, that the Council has sat on this, has blocked this measure for such a long time, and I think we need to do all that we can to get movement. And I think Latvia is beginning to do that now, and we should welcome that. And this is an eminently reasonable measure that we're putting forward. There are qualified women out there who are quite capable of doing a very good job on company boards, and women in leadership is an EU matter. We need to do it and fight for all the women throughout the European Union.
Thank you very much indeed. Adesso, signore Sergio Gaetano.
Now I call Sergio COFFERATI for 1 minute. Thank you, President. Madam Commissioner, I'm also of the view that the blockage in the Council on this item is simply shameful. There's no the proper reason for this. It's purely a question of ideology. Lines of thinking are being put forward that are completely unsupported. Now, you're looking for ways and means of tackling this. Let me share my own thoughts with you briefly. Equal opportunities is a basic human right, which is now being denied by hostility within the Council. Gender equality on the items that have been mentioned here, and you can see this in those countries that have significant experience with this, create great advantages in the productive system. Women can bring in a significant way of thinking and knowledge that men are often lacking, and that's very important. You've got to have a proper body of legislation for this with penalties attached to it, because principles are not enough on their own. The current situation is unsustainable. You can't talk about Europe based on rights when such discrimination continues.
Grazie, onorevole COFFERATI.
Thank you very much, Mr. COFFERATI.
Do procedury.
We should now commence the catch the eye procedure. It is very late, thus I will ask for each political group to delegate one person. For EPP, Madam Patricija ŠULIN will be the speaker. The floor is yours.
Hvala predsedujoči za besedo. Žensk je premalo na področjih odločanja. Tudi v Evropskem parlamentu smo.
There are too few women in positions of power. Also here we are in a minority. But in 2013 there was 17.8% of women in leading or managerial positions. If we didn't have activities in Europe such as the European Strategy for Equality or quotas for women in company boards, we would see even less. It's a very important area because the EU must play an important and leading role, but we are becoming active too late. Women are welcome in the industry and in the economy, but if we want to see changes, then we must act through different stages of life. Women are being educated, and for example they should train in IT, and then perhaps men should take up care as an education so that there will be more equality. The lack of equality means a great loss of interest. The GDP is 10% lower because of this situation.
So, onorevole Michela GIUFFRIDA.
Grazie Presidente, signor Presidente.
Thank you, President. President in Office, Commissioner. The obstructionism on gender equality in quoted company boards is simply incomprehensible, quite apart from being absolutely unacceptable. Thanks to mediation of the Italian presidency, we planned for those member states who already had a good performance to continue their policies without needing to transpose the directive. Above all, the 40% threshold of women was not going to be subject to penalties. No member state would have been punished if that objective had not been fulfilled. But on the basis of all the available research, which shows the positive impact of women in positions of power, of course you can't just confine yourself to statistics. All this leads you to wonder, what are people afraid of? What's the problem in transposing this directive, which doesn't even have any binding penalties written into it? I do hope that it's not just a cultural problem and to do with economic governance. I do hope that the Latvian presidency will not allow this to remain in a vacuum for another 6 months. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Z grupy EKR, pani
For ECR, Ruža TOMAŠIĆ will take the floor.
Podzastupljenost žena
underrepresentation of women
u europskim poduzećima jedan je od
underrepresentation of women in European management boards is one of political challenges are first rate, but I believe that we are approaching this problem on one dimension. I don't believe that anybody here believes that this low percentage of women on management board is something good, but many of those, among which I am also, believe that forceful increase of this threshold could be counterproductive. Any discrimination must be rigorously sanctioned, but the question remains whether by the system of quotas we are going to gain respect for women in business. I believe that we are going to make them just the objects. We are just going to meet the formal requirements, and they are not going to be those who really deserve respect of male colleagues. Thank you.
Chwala. Z grupy ALDE pani...
Madam Filiz HYUSMENOVA will speak on behalf of ALDE.
Господин председател, госпожо комисар.
Thank you. Mr. President, Madam Commissioner, we have a single labour market in the European Union that should give equal chance to men and women to occupy managerial positions. However, this is not the case in all member states. The draft directive creates conditions for achieving the objective. It is not just a hollow promise. Given its impact, the directive will ensure fairer distribution of men and women on the single European labour market. We have to be consistent in our words and deeds. Wish you all success, Madam Jourova.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Prego.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear colleagues, we women, we want to have an equal position with men, but not simply because we are women. We have all the diplomas that are needed, and therefore we need to have a social system behind us that will put us in a position that will help us and allow us to carry out fully our work, so that because of her career she shouldn't renounce from having a family. That's only we can achieve a quota of 40%, and I think there should be a less punitive and more attractive approach to this issue, particularly in SMEs and family companies. Thank you very much.
Grazie tanto, onorevole.